Hello, welcome back. Nice to see you again. Today I am going to tell my story because I have it on my website, but it is pretty lengthy and I've never really told it on video. So I thought it would be kind of fun to tell it on video. And I'm going to be starting a new series soon. So I wanted to start with my story because I'm going to be bringing some other people's stories to my channel. And I just wanted to set the foundation or the groundwork for what's coming next. So I want to tell you why I do what I do. And I think whenever anybody is doing anything, there's always a really wonderful story behind why they are. And that doesn't mean that you have to be doing what you were meant to do, the most profound thing in your life. You could be doing anything, but there's always a story of how you got there. So I think that's really fascinating to learn about people and what has brought them to what they're doing. I know one of the hardest questions for kids to answer is, what do you want to be when you grow up? Because that's a big question. And for most adults, they don't even know when they're 60 what they want to do when they grow up. So asking a 10-year-old or a 15-year-old or a 20-year-old those questions is rather daunting. And I think there's pressure um, in our society to know the answer to that. But it's something hard. And I think as we move through our lives, it changes. So, anyway, uh, getting back to my story, I want to just tell you a little bit about me, my background, and why I'm doing what I'm doing today. So, when I was younger in my 20s, I was it started more in my teenage years. I became very, very depressed. Now that I have my master's degree and I understand diagnosing people and things, I would say I had major depression. I mean, there were times when I did not want to go on. I did not feel like life was worth living. And I was in a lot of very, uh, a huge amount of pain. And I knew that I needed to figure out what to do about that. I had gone away to college, and that first year of college away from home was brutal. I was in my dorm room most of the time sleeping. I couldn't get out of bed. I could not, I mean, I would drag myself places, but it was really, really hard. So I needed to go home. I couldn't stay at the college I was at. I needed to go closer to my family and see what I could do. So I did, and I started attending the school where I grew up, which was Albuquerque, New Mexico, and I started looking for answers. So I did a couple of different programs and therapy type things, and nothing seemed to make that much difference. But one of my friends in one of my programs that I did do found this other program, and she told me it was amazing. And I decided to look into that to see if that might be the answer. And it was a 6-month long program, very, very intense. And it was going to cost $6,000. And this was in about 1989. Okay. I'm dating myself as far as how old I am, and that's okay. But so that was a long time ago. And I think a program today that's $6,000 is a lot. So back then, just imagine. But it was a 6-month long program. It was going to meet twice a week for 8 hours a day. And it was really intense, obviously. So I figured out a way to pull that money together, which was another amazing and challenging thing because I didn't have that kind of money and I just had to find that kind of money and do some things that were really uncomfortable. Not uncomfortable like illegal or anything like that. I had to ask to borrow and ask to have a loan co-signed by people that I didn't know very well and just put myself out there and risk rejection and things like that to get that money together. But I found somebody who believed in me, and I knew I would pay it back. I've always been about integrity in my life. So this person took a risk on me and co-signed a loan for me to get the money, and I did the program. And it was the best thing I ever did in my whole life. It was very, very difficult, very, very hard. I had to go into some places in my life that were really scary, but it was all about breathing. It was about looking in the mirror and finding out why I felt the way I did about myself, and really healing those old wounds. They were old childhood wounds. They were things carried down through my ancestors about self-esteem and self-love, and they just had to do with a lot of different things within myself that made me feel unlovable, unworthy, not enough, that I couldn't have what I wanted, that I didn't belong in the world. I mean, there were just so many different things that I healed in that program. And when I came out of it, I felt like a completely different person, and I was so grateful. I just can't even tell you how grateful. And I decided right then and there, and I was very young. There were so many people in the program that were in their 30s and 40s and 50s. There were 30 of us all together, and 15 were men and 15 were women, which is really amazing because um, finding 15 men that were doing that kind of deep work in 1989 was amazing, and finding 30 people and having it be half and half was wild. But anyway, so I decided that that was what I wanted to do with my life at like in my early 20s. And so I started to do the practitioner training and all of that, and I really thought that was going to be my life path. And I had graduated with a psychology major, got my bachelor's. So I thought, oh, great, this is the perfect way for me to go. But what happened for me was as I was going through my practitioner training and stuff, I felt so uncomfortable with my age. And I just didn't have the confidence. I had healed my depression, but there was a real confidence problem for me on who was I to, to work with people, and who was I to be an entrepreneur, and who was I to I think that I could have my own business and without a master's degree or a PhD, who was I to think that I could help heal people? And so this block, I did not work through in my program, and I struggled with in my practitioner training, and eventually um, I just could not overcome it. So instead, I decided to go into a safer route. You know, the entrepreneur spirit was not within me, and it was something that I just could not overcome. So I went into the work world and did that. But there was always a part of me that knew what my soul calling was, and when I, after being in the work world for quite some time, I decided to go back and get my master's degree. I wasn't much of a student. I mean, I liked school, but it didn't it didn't thrill me. I didn't really like the whole way that you had to learn and things like that in school. I felt very suffocated by it, but I went ahead and did it. I got my master's degree. It took me 3 years. I was working full time while I was doing it, and I was very exhausted, but I just kept going and I kept going. And I finally got my master's degree, and I was really excited when I did because I thought, oh my gosh, now I'm going to get to do what I really love. Um, but I got my master's degree, and then I started working in the field. And what I found is that with my master's degree, they were only paying me $13 an hour. I was considered a professional, so it was salaried. So that meant I only got paid for 40 hours a week at $13 an hour. But my weeks were 16-hour weeks. They were a lot more than the 40 hours because I was a professional and I was on salary, even though I was making a lot less than I was in the corporate world where I had left. So I did that for a while. I was also working with people who were court ordered to be in therapy, which is not what I wanted at all. and they weren't interested in healing and those sorts of things. And I was also very limited on what I could do. It was like I had to follow a protocol based on what the agency I worked with agreed was the right protocol. And I had to use all these different psychological methods that I'd learned in school instead of learning and using the things that healed me of my own depression. So it just didn't all fit together. And I got a real clear message from within me and my intuition that said, if you continue doing this, you are going to get physically sick. And I thought that was kind of odd, but I just really got this feeling that I couldn't do this. And so before I even got my license, I decided that the corporate world was a better fit for me. I made more money. I didn't struggle. There was not this lack consciousness like working in an agency. I worked for engineers. I had, the best computers, the best equipment to work with. I worked in HR. I went on to be working in marketing. I worked as a project coordinator. And I just felt like that was a better fit, even though it wasn't my calling. So I went back into the corporate world and I worked there for almost 20 years. And I worked for the same firm the whole time and I loved the firm. I loved the people. I loved the work, but it still, again, was not my soul calling. And so after about 15 years in that business, my soul started calling me again and just telling me, there's more. There's something you are meant to do. You've got to do this. So I started taking classes. I started really looking. I had a very long commute to work. Was raising a young son and just working incredibly long hours between getting my son to school, driving to work, working, um, and trying to raise a family. But in my long commute, I listened to podcasts. And so I started really getting into podcasts and would listen to those every day for, I think it was like an hour and a half in the car altogether from the time I left my house to the time I would get home at night. And one of my favorite podcasts I was listening to one day, and I heard this woman named Marissa Peer, and she was talking about this type of hypnotherapy that she practiced called rapid transformational therapy. And basically, what she said was that this was a method where you only need 1 to 3 sessions and you could find the root cause of something in your life that you wanted to change. And that was fascinating to me because, it had taken me 6 months to heal myself of depression. And then it had taken me another 6 months to get my practitioner training and another 6 months to do a second level practitioner training. And every time it was another $6,000. And, I had invested a lot of money at a very young age in wanting to do this type of work. And Marissa was telling me I could do the same thing in 1 to 3 sessions for clients. And so that to me just sounded incredible. Um, and I was so fascinated and felt so in awe and envy for what she was doing. And a few podcasts later, she actually um, put a session online that you could listen to her doing this work with a client. And it was amazing. I could not believe what she did in one session for this client. And then I found out she was training people to do what she did. And she was from London. So I thought, oh gosh, I've got to go to London. I mean, there was no way. I was raising a son. My husband worked a construction job as a foreman. He had to be on site. There was no way that he could miss work. And I didn't have any family where I lived that could take care of my son. So I thought, well, there's no way. But then I found out Marissa was teaching in LA it was going to be over the Thanksgiving holiday. So it was going to be in two different smaller blocks. It was a 10-day training. And I thought, well, you know what? I'm getting chills all over my body about this. So I'm going to see if I can put this together and make it work. So I looked into attending the training, the dates, looked at my vacation schedule, looked at could I pull the money together because it was not cheap. Again, it was, uh, about, the kind of money I was spent back on my practitioner training. And then it was, I had to get to LA and get, it had to be in person at the time. But in like 2 days, I was able to bring it all together and it just lined up. And I had been asking for an answer to how I could do this in my life. And it felt like this had all lined up for a purpose. So it was like an answer to my prayers. So I went ahead and I did the training. And that was the start of something really beautiful in my life. And as I came home and I started practicing what I'd learned, um, I just started getting clients and I started seeing other people's lives changing. And my heart was on fire. It was so amazing. But I wasn't able to leave my work at the time because again, I had that block with the entrepreneurial thing. But Marissa had made it a little bit easier. She had made it so that we could have our names on her website when people would look for practitioners in their area. There were very few where I lived in Phoenix, Arizona at the time. So I was getting like a steady flow of clients while I was doing my work and doing my corporate job. And as I built my practice and started getting more and more referrals and things like that, I was eventually able to leave or to go, asked to go part time at my work. And that was over like a 2 year period. And um, I've, when I finally asked to go part time, I wasn't able to do that. And so that's when I knew, okay, now I can do this. It's time to go ahead and let go of that and go into this full time. And so it was a nice, easy transition. And I transitioned in about 2018 to doing RTT full time. And it's been an amazing journey since then. Since then, I've had some life changes. I've moved from Phoenix all the way to the East Coast. I've added coaching because one of the things I found is that people who do RTT sometimes want more afterwards. They don't want to just heal their past, but then they want to be supported in moving forward in their lives. And that has been something that has really, really been fun for me to do. And I also get to incorporate some of the things I learned back in my early program in my 20s about how amazing emotion can be and how when we learn to really bring our emotional guidance system back online, that can just help us change even more. So I've really integrated emotion into my RTT practice as well as just doing coaching, helping people to uh, reach their goals by releasing emotional blocks. And then now, as I've been able to slow down in my life a little bit, I've also realized that one of the things that really made my life hard and made me feel awful in my life was the amount of clutter and the amount of noise that was constantly in my life. And so I've started to embrace and decluttering my physical things and realizing how much I was looking outside of myself for stuff that would fill me up to make me feel better. And as I felt better from the inside out, I've realized I don't need the stuff that I thought I did. I don't need anything from outside of myself to feel better. All I need is me. And I I love to share that with the world and I love to give. And of course, I have a lot of responsibilities and things that I love to give, but I've just learned that giving to me and decluttering my life and having space for myself and my family and what's really important has really made a difference in my life. So I'm now bringing in decluttering coaching. I'm in the process of getting certified in something called the No Mess Method by Dana K. White. She's wrote a book called Decluttering at the Speed of Life, and she has a website called A Slob Comes Clean. And she is one I'm training with to do this whole new aspect of my life, which is decluttering. And another thing I like about that is it's not so serious because I found that not everybody needs to or wants to do the deep emotional work that I do. And so I want to be more playful with it as well. So that is my story. And so that is how I've become an RTT therapist, an emotional wellness coach, and soon to be a decluttering coach. And why I've started a YouTube video to share my authentic self and to see if anyone else out there in the world could use and resonates with my skills and abilities or can benefit in any way from anything I have to share. So, thank you for listening. Thank you for coming along on my journey. And as I continue to share and to grow, I hope that you will do the same for yourself. Never stop, never give up, and never have that expectation of how your life should be or how the kind of results you need to get in order to keep going. Just keep going. Just be yourself. Share yourself with the world. And if you can help one person, then that's enough. My YouTube channel is very small right now. And I just figure, you know what? Yeah, one person is enough because luckily I've gotten to work with hundreds of people in my practice and I've seen lives change, not just because of me, but I've gotten to be a small piece. And there is nothing better. I mean, that is why, when I get to the end of my life, that's going to be the things that I am most grateful for is my family, my friends, and making a very small difference, but yet a difference in the world. So take care and I'll talk to you soon. Bye.